I got one question on the fragileness, Brian, because I do agree. I think adversity, it hardens you and it makes you more resilient to take on life's, challenges that are thrown at you, and a lot of them are unexpected. Do you feel though there are a limit? There's a point of diminishing returns, or a point where, because a lot of us go through real phases in our life where there's a real challenge. I'm in one right now, right? And some people have tragedy, they have divorces, they have crazy custody battles in court, and they're just exhausted. And 3 years go by, and they've just been beaten down, and you throw your hands up. Would you say that despite those events that can occur in someone's life, in setbacks and major challenges that makes you kind of question, like, why is all this happening? That even when it's to that extent, that still hardens you up, and it better prepares you for future adversity. Do you feel there's a limit to that? And if so, where is that limit? I'm just curious your thoughts on it.
Great question. It depends. I think it depends on how you frame it up. I would offer that again, without diminishing the scope of the challenge that you're facing, that all of us have faced and will face, and the horrors that are going on in the world right now. So I don't want to pretend that there's any naivete to this, but if we're talking performance at the highest possible levels, and again, I'm not talking mediocrity and, oh yeah, let me pat you on the head and all those things, but what's excellence really look like? What does the ideal sage, to use a Stoic idea, right? Which is an impossible standard, by the way. There was never an ideal sage, literally. So there's an asymptotic potential that will never hit. But if we're talking ideals here, then I would say that every single obstacle that you get provides you with the opportunity to deepen your practice and become better, period. No exception, full stop. And again, what's the greatest tragedy? That we're going to die? That our loved ones are going to die? Well, that's a known fact that's going to happen. So let's embrace that. Then let's back up from that reality, look at our challenge we're currently facing, and frankly, bring gratitude to the fact that we're alive to face it. Mundane example, like the most ridiculous example that I'm not using as a juxtaposition to your challenges, but my wife is even more into this stuff than I am, right? So we're into, breathing properly, resetting our jaws. And she just drove out 90 minutes to San Antonio to get a retainer for my wife, one of my kids. We've all got these little mouthpieces, right? So she spends however much she spends time-wise and money-wise. 2 days afterwards, my daughter takes it out, cleans it in the bathtub, and drops it right down the drain, right? Literally. And for, whatever, it's gone. You know what I mean? Whatever, it's just gone. And my wife's usually really good at recovering. I'm usually the one that channels my dad and gets frustrated. But I look at it, and the Stoic practice is it could be worse. So I'd step out for 30 seconds just to be relaxed because it's a little bit whatever. And then I look at the bathtub and the water, and I think, well, my daughter could have drowned in that same exact bathtub water. And I'm going to get upset about a little retainer that just got lost. And again, I'm using this as a little example. But that practice of being able to radically accept reality, this is another Phil Stutz idea. You don't accept it, you radically accept it. Even Eckhart Tolle talks about act as if you scripted it. Act as if you and the heroic gods got together and you decided this is precisely what you needed right now in order to become stronger. Then the practical way that you use that obstacle to get stronger, we can talk about. Because I'm not about, oh, yeah, it sounds good. I'm about how do you do it? And there are specific things that you can do in that moment that, from my mind, absolutely guarantee that you will use it to get stronger, full stop. Now, it's hard to do, but that's kind of the frame with which I approach it. I'll pause there, knowing I already said a lot, and there's a lot more we can, and I look forward to talking about.
Well, and I'm curious, and I'm sure the viewers are, can you walk us through how to reframe your mind so when those things, arise, you do attack it from a completely different perspective? And I love that. You're almost like taking it head on. It's like, okay, this is my circumstance. I'm accepting it, and I'm reframing how I look at this challenge in my life. Because you could take, let's say, a custody case, right? You're blessed to have that beautiful child in your life, right? So maybe there's collateral damage and there's this feud, but okay, at the end of the day, you have this beautiful little child and this and that. So I like that, of looking at, the silver lining and what can you still be grateful for in that moment. But what are the practical methods that we can start to adopt to help us get through these difficult situations?
So good, dude. All right, cool. So let me step back for a moment and frame up a couple of different keywords. So the second objective in the book, the second objective in our app and in the coach training program is forge anti-fragile confidence. I'm literally preparing for a talk I'm going to give next week with some of the most elite military commanders in the U.S. military on exactly this. It's what the most elite performers want me to talk about. It's my tattoo. Forge anti-fragile confidence. Three keywords we need to define, then we'll get into the practice. First, you got to forge. Well, first, the subtitle of the book is Activate Your Heroic Potential. So activation energy is a thing. At 451 degrees, as you guys know, you can start a fire. Anything below that, you can't. So you got to get out of your cynical little attitude and activate. You got to go all in. Stay grounded, but go in. You got to activate. But 451 degrees will not forge a steel. You got to get that to 2255. It's a lot harder to forge a sword than it is to make a sport. Really, there's like a different temperature there. You know, what do you want here? So you got to go into the forge. You got to show up like you mean it. Then anti-fragility is the opposite of fragility. I got this from Nassim Taleb. Everyone thinks about resiliency. He says that's nice, better than being fragile where you break when life hits you. But what if you actually literally got stronger? So conceptually, we got to know there's something that might be the opposite of fragile. It's anti-fragility. He says the wind, a custody battle, will extinguish a candle, but it will fuel a fire. So the question is, when you face your challenges, what are you? Are you a candle or are you a fire? Now, again, bigger the challenge, the bigger the fire has to be, or it will be snuffed out by the challenge, right? But conceptually, that's anti-fragility. But then you got to build confidence. The word confidence, confidere, means intense trust. Intense trust in what? That things are going to go perfectly? Of course not. That you have what it takes to meet any and all challenges you face. How do you build intense trust in any relationship? You do what you say you will do. Now, this leads us to how you use a challenge. I'll use a personal example. We made history raising $5 million via the SEC's crowdfunding regulations 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Shoot, almost 3 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun, right? And then we spent a year and we wound up raising $11 million as part of that. We spent a year and basically, you know, a lot of that money to launch our app with the same company that built Slack, Tinder, Uber Eats, etc. 2 days before we're going to launch, literally 2 days before we're going to launch, I'm like ready, we're fired up, whatever. I get a letter from the SEC telling me they're opening an investigation into our crowdfunding. Goosebumps, I say that. 2 days before we're going to launch. You know, I got my Oura ring on at the time. Heart rate goes up. All right, let's go, you know? And then what did I do? I literally said to myself, I don't remember this, but my right-hand guy who was there when I got the letter said, the first words out of my mouth were, after I read the letters, well, my whole team was in my kitchen, dude, 2 days before we're going out to the launch. I get this letter. My first words were, the heroic gods have blessed us with an opportunity to practice our philosophy. And then we got to work.
Mic drop right there. Oh man,
dude, it took
us
epic. It took us eight months to navigate a process that usually takes 24. And again, I knew we did everything at the highest possible level, morally and technically, and it is what it is. I'm not going to argue with that. First person to do something, you know, all right, cool. Bleeding edge. There's a reason why it's called the bleeding edge. You know, like, all right, cool. We're bleeding a little bit here. The firm we hired to get us through the process hired me to keynote their partner meeting to talk about how we went through it with anti-fragility. So when that happened, the old me, and again, my dad drank a lot. So he drank enough for me and 10 other people. You know, my brother followed his footsteps. His dad did the same and killed himself. So I've never drunk. You know, it's not my thing. But I could have decided I wanted to numb myself. And now I'm going to go off the rails and I'm going to start doing things because I don't want to attack this problem. Instead, I looked at my protocol and I doubled down on everything. Went from meditating an hour a day to 2 hours a day. I went from doing this kind of training to that kind of training. I went from making sure my sleep was solid to getting the highest aura scores I've ever gotten the month that I got the letter. And I used this challenge to double down on my protocol. And this brings us back to Phil Stutz. He calls that emotional stamina. In one of our early chats, he said, you have a lot of emotional stamina. Perhaps the most I've ever seen, he said. To which I'm like, dude, that's awesome. I have no idea what that means. Next call, what is emotional stamina? It's the ability to handle pain, uncertainty, and hard work without breaking. And then follow-on question is, how do I get more of it? And this is it. This is the most direct answer to your question. He told me that if you want emotional stamina, what I now call anti-fragile confidence, to know you can handle whatever life throws at you and get stronger, then the worse you feel, the more committed you need to be to your protocol, which presupposes you have a protocol, which is a whole nother chat. But if when life hits you and you're able to say, life just hit me, it's time for me to make sure that I'm doubling down on my protocol, then that thing that used to break you literally becomes the thing that makes you stronger. Now, it doesn't make your problems go away immediately, but now it's all right. If I'm approaching the custody battle, it's all right. What do I need to do to show up the most energized, productive, connected version of myself, to model the things I want my kids to see in me through this hardship, that I want my team to see me showing up in this context. I want my attorney, I want even my ex to be able to see this is how it's done. And I'm going to use that as fuel to practice my philosophy at the highest possible levels. It's your Super Bowl, dude. Like, let's go. And again, I don't mean to diminish the scope of the challenge, but that's how I practically operationalize this. Again, get me fired up. And I went from sweating after my workout to sweating going off, but let's go.
I think it's a really good takeaway, because like you kind of pointed out, there's two ways to take on adversity, right? You can take it head on, or a lot of people go down the wrong path. They start drinking, they start getting into unhealthy habits that maybe are used to fill that void or whatever, that it's to mask the pain of that challenge. Or it's like, okay, hey, instead of drinking that glass of whiskey at night, go to bed at 8:30. You know what I mean? Get up earlier and meditate. And for me, that's kind of how I responded. I think I've have enough background where I've been through some hard things throughout my life that I was primed to know, all right, I need to control what I can control, and that will make me more resilient to whatever is thrown at me in this kind of current situation. So that was like, all right, I'm dialing in my nutrition. I'm going to bed earlier. I bought a sauna for my basement and put a cold tub right next to it. All right, I'm going to get into that. And all these things, it's like, all right, even though there's things outside of my control happening, if I can just control these components and be healthy, I'm better set up to take it on. And now that didn't make it any easier, but it sounds like in a way that's getting at what you're talking about is
that's it.
You know what I mean? Where, unfortunately some of my friends, have gone down the wrong path where they just start partying and they're drinking all the time and they're, chasing the ladies, and there's really no meaning to their life. And it's all just a Band-Aid for a deeper issue or something, you're going through a divorce, whatever it is. And it's like, man, that is not the approach. Like, get in the weight room, live healthy, and then like that storm will pass and you'll come out the other side. But yeah, that's a really interesting insights from that. This is incredible.